Over the years, popular TV show Pawn Stars has featured many items related to the Nintendo universe. Today on It's All Dug in Games, we're going to take a walk down memory lane on 4 of the most memorable items and find out who really won from those deals. Hey folks, it's Doug, and you're watching It's All Dug in Games. Today we're going to do a fun little exercise. I'm sure you probably already figured out by now, I love all things retro games and all things Nintendo, but I bet you didn't know I'm also a fan of the TV show Pawn Stars. I just love the content. I love watching the unique items that come through the store. I like watching the negotiations with Rick and Chumley and so on and so forth. And I recently saw that Pawn Stars YouTube channel posted a compilation video of 4 of the best Nintendo-related deals or items that came through the store. So rather than just do kind of a generic reaction video where we play clips from the video and kind of go, ooh, that was nice, I want to do something a little different, add a little bit to this. We're going to do an analysis of each of the 4 items in terms of the value that was assigned to the item at the time that the show aired versus its perceived value today, and find out for each of these deals who is better off today for having bought or sold the item or for having declined the offer from Rick or Chumley. So that's the exercise here. Let's find out who the long-term winners and losers were. And we're going to start with perhaps the most controversial Nintendo item that's ever showed up on Pawn Stars, the second print Super Mario Bros. 1 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was a 9.4 A++ WATA graded game. And of course, what happened here, this episode that aired in November of 2019, Richard, I believe his name is Lecce, Lecce. He is a famous video game investor with one of the world's largest collections of sealed graded games. He is a hardcore sealed video game investor, as hardcore as they get. Now, I'm not going to get into controversy surrounding him, surrounding WATA games, or any of that. There is plenty of material on YouTube that you can pour over if you want to learn more about that. We're here simply to do a fun little exercise based on perceived valuation then versus today. So anyhow, Richard rolls into the Pawn Stars shop, plunks down his second print Super Mario Bros. 1 and wants $1 million. I'm not going to do the whole... No, I'm not going to do that. And as you might imagine, Rick Harrison, of course, the star of Pawn Stars, is a little flabbergasted. He's never seen a $1 million video game before. He's familiar with the fact that there have been auctions at the time that they showed up, that he's seen games in the 5 figures, but he wasn't sure about the existence of this super elite high-grade market. But as always, when you walk into Pawn Stars, Rick's always got a guy. And it turns out he has on speed dial the founder of WATA Games, Dennis Kahn. And sure enough, Dennis Kahn, who also apparently has a teleportation device at WATA Games, was able to just absolutely appear out of nowhere right next to Richard, and it goes down like this. Rick wants to know, is this a $1 million game? Dennis kind of goes into a slick presentation of how great sealed graded games are, how the market is just unbelievable, how this is an iconic example that kicked off all of the mania around graded games. It's the highest graded copy he's ever seen, blah, 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 blah. And then when we just want to know how much is the damn thing worth, he says it's priceless. Can't put a value on it. High risk, high reward, says Dennis, to which Rick responds with, well, I've learned something here today. And as they go to commercial break, clearly Rick takes a few tums. Chumley is like, and finally Rick kind of concludes, look, this is too high risk for me. I'm going to have to peace out on this one. I can't even make you an offer on this. And with that, Richard takes his game home, presumably puts it back on the shelf, so there's no transaction. So again, we can only kind of say that we're putting a value of $1 million, which is what the seller wanted for it, considering that Dennis refused to really properly appraise it. So that begs the question. in 2023, where we're at now, more specifically in August of 2023, would this game fetch $1 million or more at auction? So in other words, was Richard the winner here for not selling for $1 million in 2019? Or was Rick and the Pawn Stars crew smarter for passing on this deal and laying out the $1 million? Well, you know, here's what I got from my research. The highest recorded instance of a graded sealed Super Mario Bros. 1 for the NES that I've seen sold for $720,000. It was a 9.6A, but it was a later print. And of course, this transaction happened back in November 2022. So at the end of the day, I can't definitively state that this game is worth more than $1 million or even $1 million. It is likely that it may have topped $720,000 in auction because people go bananas for the earlier prints of games, specifically Super Mario Brothers. Do I really think it would have gone considerably over $1 million? Honestly, I don't think so. So because I would believe that the value of the game back in 2019, established at $1 million, is probably about where it is today. Therefore, you can conclude there were no real winners or losers in this. You might give the nod to Pawn Stars for not making $1 million gamble that may well not have paid off. So if I absolutely had to, I'd give the slight nod here on this one to Pawn Stars for not pulling the trigger on this transaction. Coming up next is the Nintendo World Championships carts. And I said plural because we're not just talking about the gray NWC cart, we're talking about a gray and a gold NWC cart. So that's right, Pat Contri, otherwise known as Pat the NES Punk on YouTube, Twitch, social media, you name it, wandered into the store back in February 2013. He walks in with a silver and a gold NWC carts. These are the authentic, real deals that Pat has had for ages. Chumley is behind the counter because I guess Rick really couldn't be bothered to look at Nintendo World Championships carts, even though they're arguably the most amazing Nintendo artifacts that have ever walked into Pawn Stars. Well, anyhow, after a little bit of a friendly discussion and back and forth, Pat mentions that he would like to get $35,000 for both carts. That's right, both of them for $35,000. Now, granted, let's be fair. In 2013, that's probably about right on the nose is what a fair price for the silver and the gold cartridges would be. The market for Nintendo World Championships from 2013 might as well be the market from 1,000 years ago for this particular item. It has gone crazy since then. Chumley apparently does not have the authorization from the store to spend that much money and counters $15,000 for the pair of carts. After a little back and forth, Pat relents. It comes down to $32,000, but Chumley just isn't allowed to go more than $15,000 without a permission slip from Rick. And apparently he's out to lunch or something like that, and therefore, unfortunately for Pawn Stars, no deal is made, and Pat walks out of there with both of his cartridges. Let's put it this way, and we'll get into a little bit more of the math later in the episode, consider a teaser, but I will say right now, the winner of this, in terms of who got the best of it with the values in 2013 versus 2023, is Pat Contri, and it's not even close. We'll drill a little bit deeper towards the end of the episode as to just how much of a home run this one was, but yes, we're scoring this one for Pat big time. Next up, a really interesting item. This is the Nintendo M82 Kiosk. Now, the M82 Kiosk is a device that Nintendo supplied to retail partners. It was a little tabletop system that could hold 12 or so carts. I believe it was 12, might have been more than that. And prospective customers, could play various Nintendo games in the store, try them out before they committed to a purchase. I believe there there were a few thousand of these manufactured. They were never intended to be in the hands of the general public, never to be sold to the general public. But as you can imagine, some of these kind of got out into the wild, weren't properly returned to Nintendo and destroyed, and they are a highly desired collectible for those who are into Nintendo promotional materials, the high-end Nintendo collecting community. This is one of the grails. So a Nintendo N82 kiosk walks into the store. Everyone is interested at Pawn Stars, finds it intriguing, and you know what? Rick's got a guy. That's right. Once again, Rick has Dennis Kahn from WATA on speed dial here. Dennis is on point with his personal teleportation device. He materializes in the store immediately and takes a look at this bad boy and says, wow, you got yourself a really cool, interesting item here. Now, in Dennis's estimation, this type of kiosk typically sold in 2020 for about $1,500 to $2,000, but he hadn't seen one come up on the market in a while, which tracks. You don't see these come up for sale very often, so he was thinking that perhaps someone would be willing to spend up to $3,000 for it. Rick, intrigued, interested, but couldn't quite bring himself to offer more than $2,000 for the kiosk. The seller did not want to go any lower than $3,500, clearly the top end of the appraisal he had been given, and thus there was no deal to be had. Now, what is a Nintendo M82 kiosk worth today? It's a tricky one to go with because just like back in 2020, you don't see these come up for sale often. They're usually sold in private sales, so there's not a lot of public records of these sorts of things. But if you go through and you do the research, you read all the forums, you ask friends and so on and so forth, you tend to get the consensus that they're around $3,000 to $4,000 today. So the valuation on these has gone up a bit since 2020, not by a ton. So I would say that in this case, the seller was better off for not having sold the kiosk in 2020 for $2,000 because it's worth twice that today. So we're going to chalk this one up. This deal ended up favoring the seller who did not sell. So far, just looking at it, we have sellers 2, Pawn Stars 1 in the deals. And now that brings us to our fourth item that we're going to take a look at today. This is the Sharp Nintendo TV set. Now, this is a cool item, and this is pretty desirable among Nintendo collectors. Sharp partnered with Nintendo during the life cycle of the original Nintendo Entertainment System and created this TV that has a built-in Nintendo Entertainment System with it. Now, it's an interesting item, and when you talk about the Sharp Nintendo TV and thinking about values, you have to keep a lot of things in mind. There's a lot of little bits and pieces and details with the Sharp Nintendo TV that give that definitely weigh in on its value. First and foremost, there were 4 plastic feet on the bottom of the TV that were supports. They were very brittle, weak plastic feet, and you almost always see them partially or completely broken off when you find one in the wild, in a collection, what have you. There are also dedicated controllers that were, instead of gray controllers, they were black controllers to kind of match the design aesthetic of the TV. You don't usually see those with the sets. They seem to get lost. They seem that you can plug in a regular Nintendo controller, but obviously it's not the authentic original OEM controller. As with any vintage TVs, they had their own dedicated remote, which is almost always missing with these as well. And there's a few other variables, like the cartridge door is usually broken off, so on and so forth. So you can find a Sharp Nintendo TV, but it's very difficult to find one that's in the proper, collection quality cosmetic condition. Having said that, on an episode in season 19 of Pawn Stars that aired in 2021, a prospective seller walked into the shop with a Sharp Nintendo TV. Now, it is worth noting, this one was in very poor condition. It had the missing feet, it didn't have an original controller, it was generally pretty dirty. The seller asked $1,200 for the Sharp Nintendo TV. And after a little hemming and hawing, the seller accepted Pawn Star's offer of $650 and sold the TV. So that begs the question. Is a rough condition Sharp Nintendo TV worth more than $650 today? Well, the short answer is, believe it or not, yes. I have seen examples of pristine Sharp Nintendo TVs in the last set of months go for many thousands of dollars, $3,000-$4,000. I have seen unfortunate examples of these TVs with various things, mostly with the feet issues, lacking the original controller. I've seen them sell for over $1,000, even with those issues. So, in the case of this particular transaction, I would suggest that Pawn Stars did pretty good. Whether they sold it right away or not, if they held on to it, they definitely have something worth probably twice what they paid for it. And it's just 2 years ago. So I'm going to give the nod here to Pawn Stars. And to recap, what we have here is basically a draw. Pawn Stars got the better of two deals. The prospective sellers got the better of the other two. However, overall, I think the biggest winner here in this entire conversation, and I'm just calling it like I see it, whether you like him or you don't like him, Pat the NES Punk is the major winner here in this particular exercise. Now, granted, it was 10 years ago, but the price of a Nintendo World Championship gray cart today, and we're looking at recent auction results itself, was well over $35,000. And we're talking a copy of NWC in worse cosmetic condition than Pat's gray NWC. I don't even know if I want to really try and get into the conversation about the gold NWC cart. Those are so exceedingly rare that any kind of sales happen once in a blue moon. They're almost always private sales behind closed doors, and we really don't get a lot of insight into the actual values and the money that's changed hands. It would not surprise me, in my humble opinion, if a gold NWC came up on the open market. If it got to high six figures, I wouldn't even be surprised if it topped $1 million. So given what I believe to be an educated opinion, the biggest winner of all here is, it is Pat Contri, Pat the NES Punk. So, Pat, a tip of the hat. You made a great business decision 10 years ago, and I'm sure you're thanking your lucky stars you did each and every day. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of another episode of It's All Dug in Games. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Of course, please like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. And, of course, we'll be back again next time with some more It's All Dug in Games.